that to you. All right. So the Princess and the Frog. I want to talk about this for a quick minute, and then we'll get back to Cleopatra. But this is all connected. This deals with the power of imagery, right? And in my lecture series dealing with the deliberate destruction of the African American family, I talk about the Princess and the Frog. So, and I'm going to pull up a picture here as well as of this, because I can't remember which where the presentation is on PowerPoint. I have so many presentations that I've done, and I don't even remember which laptop I had back at that time when I did this. But many people have seen the movie The Princess and the Frog, which is from Walt Disney. Okay, now the movie takes place in New Orleans. Okay, during the jazz era. Okay, New Orleans, 20s, 30s, 40s, something like that, and you have Tiana, who's an African American woman, okay, and she. Let me see. Hold on. You have Tiana, who's an African American woman, and in the movie, at the beginning of the movie, her father dies. Now, the voice of her father is from Terrence Howard, okay. From Terrence Howard, actor Terrence Howard. So she wants to own some type of nightclub or something like that. She can't find any other African American man to help her with her dreams, okay, help her fulfill her dreams. She is going to end up falling in love with this Eurasian looking prince named Prince Naveen. Okay. And the only other male figure of African descent is the Voodoo priest. Okay. The Voodoo priest. And the Voodoo priest is evil. Okay. So pay attention to this. Instead of the African man, the Voodoo priest, instead of him being a protector of Princess Tiana, he's her adversary, and he's evil. Her savior is Prince Naveen, who is this Arab Eurasian looking guy. But it gets even deeper than this, because the movie takes place, the cartoon takes place in New Orleans. New Orleans is in Louisiana. Louisiana becomes part of the United States through what's known as the Louisiana Purchase of 1803. In the Louisiana Purchase of 1803, the U.S. gets 828,000 square miles of land for about 3 cents an acre from where? From France. From France. This is Napoleon Bonaparte, who just 5 years later, 5 years prior to 1803, in 1798, Napoleon conquers Egypt. What's going on in the world at this time in 1803? What's going on in the world at this time in 1798? France is fighting against a group of Africans in a colony called Saint Dominique, who the Africans are going to call Haiti and later Haiti. Saint Dominique is on the island of La Isla Española, which is what Christopher Columbus called the island when he conquered it in 1492. And the western third of the island was first the colony of Santo Domingo under the Spanish. Then in 1697, the French take over the western third. They take over that western third of the island from the Spanish, and they call it Saint Dominique. When you study the Haitian Revolution, which begins in 1791, the Haitians reclaimed African spirituality and cast aside their white God as one of my teachers, Professor Kabahaya Watha Kamene, talks about in the documentary 1804 from director Tariq Nasheed. They cast aside their white God. They reclaimed African spirituality. What was the African spirituality that these Africans reclaimed that to help them defeat the French? And they didn't just beat the French, they beat the Spanish and the British, because the Spanish and the British were allies of the French. They reclaimed Vodun, who Europeans derisively call voodoo. And we see the African man, the only other African-American male character in the movie The Princess and the Frog, he's the voodoo priest, so he's automatically evil. So what they are doing is also attacking the African spirituality, which the Haitians reclaimed to help them defeat these European colonizers. This is in the movie The Princess and the Frog. Whatever you do, don't let your children watch this movie. Don't let your children watch this movie, especially if they're of African descent. So then she finds her savior in this white-looking, Eurasian, Arab-looking prince, Prince Naveen. And they go off and they turn into frogs. They live happily ever after. She doesn't live happily ever after with an African-American man that looks like her father, who died early in the movie. He was an older man. Yeah, he died early in the movie. He could not protect her. Now, I'm not saying Prince Naveen was a bad guy. I'm not saying that. Okay? I'm not saying he was a bad guy, but he wasn't a black guy. That's what I'm saying. So we have to understand the programming behind a lot of these movies. And when we look at Brandy playing Cinderella, and she ends up with a non-African prince or non-African king, not an attack on Brandy, but it's like you have to go through and say, well, wait a second. You keep having these African princesses and black princesses, Walt Disney, but you don't have a black prince. You don't have a black king. Is Disney afraid of showing African men in positions of power, ruling over nations, controlling natural resources, having wealth? You listen to the African History Network show. When we come back, we're going to go back to Cleopatra, Queen Cleopatra VII. Talk some more about the series from Jada Pinkett Smith. And then I'm going to let you hear my discussion with Tony Browder on the subject today as well. He's the author of Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. If you like this type of information that we provide at the African History Network, you can support us, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, finance the Sunday night show, the African History Network show that I broadcast on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. I've been broadcasting the African History Network show for 13 years. 7 years on 9:10 a.m. WFDF. So we're on Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Here's our PayPal, Cash App information right here on the homepage of our website. So if you want to support us, $10, $15, $25, $50, $100, whatever it is, it definitely helps. On Saturdays, I teach ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. It's a 12-week online history course. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Okay, I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. So you can register for the class right now. As soon as you register, there's you'll be able to join us for the day's class, and you can go back and watch the previous classes also. Okay, so we deal with history, thousands of years of history, look at what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place, and also we look at, we go through and analyze the transatlantic slave trade. We look at the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors as well. Okay, so in this class, Saturday, April 29th. Then on the class is on sale $60, regularly $130. On Sundays, I teach Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. We go through and look at history chronologically, Next class will be on Saturday, April 30th, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. Hotep, everybody. Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. Wanted to do a brief overview of my 12-week online course, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Join me live in class Saturday, July 29th, 2023, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at our online school for another exciting, informative session of my 12-week online course. You see me on Roland Martin Unfiltered talking about this class. You see me on Faraji Muhammad's show, The Culture. You see me on the Tammy Mack Lake Show, as well on the Fox Soul TV network. And this is a 12-week online course. We deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. So you never look at history the same way again. So in this 12-week online course that I developed and I put together the slideshow, the curriculum, I chose the content. We can't start studying our history in slavery, okay? Even when we study the transatlantic slave trade, which is important to study, we can't start in 1619. And there's a whole lot of talk about 1619 because of the 1619 project and the 400th year anniversary of August 20th, 1619, which we do deal with in the class, but we deal with thousands of years of history that leads up to 1619 as well. We can't start in 1619 in Virginia or in the 1440s when the Portuguese get involved in the transatlantic slave trade. We have to understand the history chronologically and deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors, who take the teachings from the Nile Valley region of Africa into the Iberian Peninsula, today known as Spain and Portugal, in 711 AD. And it's going to be these teachings that are going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. Okay, they bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. This course not only deals with the transatlantic slave trade, but deals with thousands of years of history that leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Now, August 20th, 2019 marked the 400th year anniversary of those 20 and odd Africans or 20 and odd Negroes who came into Point Comfort, which was really in Hampton, Virginia, as opposed to Jamestown, Virginia, on August 20th, 1619, on the White Lion pirate ship. And we go in depth and talk about what happened and deal with the fact that you had 350 Africans who were taken from Angola and they were on a slave ship called the San Juan Batista. And the San Juan Batista gets hijacked around Veracruz, Mexico, by two English pirate ships, the White Lion and the Treasurer. Okay. And it's going to be the White Lion and the Treasurer. They come into Virginia in August of 1619, and those 29 Africans are going to be on the White Lion pirate ship, Lion, which was an English pirate ship. So the August 20th, 1619 marked the 400th year anniversary of those 29 Africans who came into Point Comfort on August 20th, 1619, in what would later become the colony of Virginia. Now, this was known as the year of return, as many African Americans were and continue to reconnect to Africa and travel to Ghana or other West African countries. When we discuss the transatlantic slave trade, we have to first understand that African people are the original people of North, Central, and South America and have been in the land that we call the United States of America, or some call Turtle Island, at least 51,700 years. And we use numerous sources in this class. We look at a timeline of history, the book references. There are 100 articles that we look at as well. We have video clips, PowerPoint presentation, etc. Now we see that the teaching of African history has come under attack, and probably unprecedented attack, in the last few years. We see in Florida, especially, the advanced placement African American studies class from the College Board. We see that being banned in the state of Florida. And we saw protests take place around that. We see with the anti-critical race laws in the past 2 or 3 years, we see that impacting how Black History Month lessons are taught in schools. Axios.com had this article, New Rules Are Limiting How Teachers Can Teach Black History Month. We see stories about we see stories about lessons dealing with slavery gone wrong, like this article from USA Today, Mock Slave Auctions, Racist Lessons, How U.S. History Class Often Traumatizes, Dehumanizes Black Students. So we see different stories like this in the latest attack dealing with the teaching of African American history, once again comes out of Florida in the new social studies standards. And part of the new social studies standards appear to teach middle school students that at least some African Americans benefited from slavery because it taught them useful skills, okay, as this article from NBC News discusses. And we've dealt with this on the African History Network show as well. So in this class, we deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. So the 1619 project, even though there is some good information in it, a lot of what we know about those 20 and odd Africans is wrong. And one of the problems with the 1619 project is it does not deal with the African presence in the land we call the United States of America, going back at least 51,700 years ago, which we deal with in the class. And we discussed Dr. David Imhotep's book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, as well as other sources. But this article here from VirginiaMercury.com, much of what we've been told about Virginia 1619 first Africans is wrong. This is from August 11th, 2019. Now, this is a historical marker that is at Fort Monroe in Virginia, and it notes the arrival of the first Africans in Virginia. And in 1619, codified slave laws don't exist in any of the 13 colonies. The first of the 13 colonies to have codified slave laws is Massachusetts in 1641. Okay, and these Africans are going to be put into a form of indentured servitude, and after about 3 to 5 years or so, they're going to be released from that. The Washington Post has a good article that deals with 93 years before 1619. It deals with the settlement that the Spanish tried to set up in the South Carolina, Georgia area. Before 1619, there was 1526, the mystery of the first enslaved Africans in what became the United States. Spanish explorers brought 100 African slaves to a doomed settlement in South Carolina or Georgia. Within weeks, the subjugated revolted, then vanished. Within weeks, the subjugated revolted, then vanished. Be sure to register for this 12-week online course. You can do so at our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com. We have the information right in the thread of the broadcast also. Okay, so one of the sources that we use in the class is Dr. David Imhotep's book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. He's a friend of mine. If you've been following the African History Network and following my show, which has been on the air 13 years, you know, I've interviewed him about 13 times, actually. And this is his first book. His second book is out, The First Americans Were Africans, revised and expanded. So this first book is out of print. Okay, but his second book is available for purchase at Amazon.com. And his book deals with his book is backed by 713 footnotes and 7 peer-reviewed articles, and it documents an African presence in North, Central, and South America dating back at least 56,000 years ago, which would be the Khoisan, who have the oldest DNA on the planet. Page 14 of his book deals with a discovery made by Dr. Albert Goodyear in Allendale County, South Carolina, in 2004. Okay. And Dr. Albert Goodyear and his team found 13 different types of evidence that thoroughly document an African presence in this country dating back at least 51,700 years ago, at least 51,700 years ago. Okay. And these were the Khoisan, the short statured Africans. So this is why, even though 1619 is important to study, we get way too caught up in 1619. Okay. African people were the first people on the planet. We look at archaeological discoveries in this class that continue to push the timelines back, like the one that came out of Morocco in June 2017, which shows remains of Homo sapiens dating back between 300,000 and 350,000 years ago, which is at least 100,000 years older than the remains that were found in Ethiopia about 1974, that dated back 195,000 years ago. But in Allendale County, South Carolina, they found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics, linguistics, paintings, skulls, skeletons, structures, and tools. They found 13 different types of evidence thoroughly documenting an African presence that dates back at least 51,700 years ago. Now, here is a picture of Dr. Albert Goodyear, who's an archaeologist at the University of South Carolina. Here is his, this is an article that he wrote. I'm sorry, this is an article about his discovery at ScienceDaily.com. ScienceDaily.com has articles dealing with scientific discoveries, archaeological discoveries. This is an article from November 18th, 2004. The article is still there. You can go read it yourself. It's called New Evidence Puts Man in North America 50,000 Years Ago. New Evidence Puts Man in North America 50,000 years ago. And a summary of the article, and this is the summary coming from ScienceDaily.com, not me. It says radiocarbon tests of carbonized plant remains, where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River. So that'd be May 2004, last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear, indicate that the settlements containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. So who are these humans? Okay. Well, an October 2012 genetic study published in Science magazine found that the Khoisan in Southern Africa are the oldest ethnic group of modern humans, with their ancestral line originating about 100,000 years ago. The Khoisan are formally called by the derogatory term Bushmen, and they are genetically unique, and no other currently known population had separated so early from our common modern human ancestor, according to the report. Now, these are two Khoisan women here. These are the short-statured Africans. Now, the Khoisan live mainly in southern Africa in territories spanning Botswana, Namibia, Angola, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. They are largely divided into two groups: hunters and gatherers, or the Sans people, S-A-N-S, and keepers of the livestock, also known as the Khoi people. Now, Sarta J. Bartman, who was derisively called Hottentot Venus, who was sold into side shows, freak shows in Europe, and traveled around in the early 1800s, and she dies in 1815. Sarah Bartman was Khoisan. Okay. The Khoisan languages include the distinctive click sounds that are not found in the languages of their neighbors. And there was an article from AtlantaBlackStar.com, 5 ethnic groups that prove the first humans were black, that you could check out as well. And then we look at different African civilizations and different ancient civilizations. And one of them is, we look at Nubia, or Ta-Nehisi, ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. We look at the early mound builders, and we look at the Olmecs as well. And we look at excerpts from Dr. David Imhotep's book. Also, the first Americans were Africans, documented evidence. And we know that there are about 1 million mounds that existed in this land that we call the United States of America. There were 1 million Indian mounds in North America. Today, there are only 100,000. Cyrus Thomas, director of the Eastern Mound Division of the Smithsonian Institute Bureau of Ethnology in 1881, said, quote, distinct from the American Indians, end quote. There was a race of mound builders in America distinct from the American Indians, okay? And there are also large erections formerly called Native American mounds, now known to be African mounds, that are shaped like pyramids that are found across North America. The largest ones surviving today are in the Mississippi Valley. The largest of all was the Cahokia Mound near the area where the Mississippi and Missouri rivers converge. Okay.